Now, if you travelled around the world to see sights like these behind me, the glaciers in Norway, Thailand's beaches, or New York's concrete jungle, you've probably taken dozens of photographs and uploaded some of them to the internet. And you're not the only ones, because millions of photographs of the same few landmarks are put on the web every single day. And that's how these amazing time-lapse images were put together, very possibly using your photographs. It was a collaboration between Google and the University of Washington, but how did they actually do it? Well, one of the researchers involved in this project is Ricardo Martin, a PhD student in computer science at the University of Washington. He joins me via webcam from Seattle. Thank you so much for being with us. I mean, they are astonishing to look at. Just walk me through how you get from individual photographs to these stunning time-lapse images.
Thank you. So the first thing we do is we actually look for all the photos we can find on the internet, and then we kind of align them. So basically, the photos look like as if they are taken from the same position. And what we do then is we stack all these photos together, and then we make a video that kind of smooths the colors, and it kind of hides the variation, like the different lighting conditions or like the people posing in front of it. We take that out and we create that smooth time lapse that you see.
And how many photographs were you actually working your way through in total? We're looking at the extraordinary photographs from Norway of that glacier disappearing and now a waterfall. I mean, what sort of quantity of photos are we talking about?
So for example, for the glacier scene, there's like about 800 photos that we found online just for that scene from that viewpoint. We found like 9,000 photos for that glacier. Like there's like 9,000 photos taken from around there. And in the whole project, we discovered time lapses in a database of 86 million photos.
We were looking at that glacier. We've also seen that Goldman Sachs building go up with the timeline running between. I mean, it is startling as an image, but what do you think the uses of something like this could be for I suppose, for geologists, for builders?
So we're hoping that this technology enables different kind of science where we can actually take time lapses of places that are remote, and you cannot put a camera there, for example, because it's like too hard or too expensive. So you could ask like tourists to actually take the photos and send them to a server where you could build a time lapse and then observe like how the place is changing over time.
How exciting was it to actually sit there, develop the technology that allowed you to do it? Because, I mean, when we look at the results, as I've said before, they're startling in terms of what it eventually looks like.
It was actually a lot of fun. Like, there's like a lot of looking for cooler scenes and like what was happening. And like, as the technology kept getting better, we could visualize more changes. And I kept discovering like small, tiny changes that happened. Like this street light move a little bit, or like things like that. We kept finding these things, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much for being with us on the programme to explain how you actually did it. Let's continue the conversation, because we're joined from Oxford by Brent Mittelstadt, an ethics expert on big data at the Oxford Internet Institute. And here also in the studio with me is our tech reporter, Zoe Kleiman. And Zoe, to you in a moment or two, but to Brent first of all there in Oxford. I mean, we're looking at the effect. I mean, they were impressive, the effects it gives you, but what are the issues you think this throws up?
Well, this particular use is, I think, very socially valuable and scientifically valuable, and as a result, more acceptable from an ethical standpoint. I mean, one of the interesting things here, and the interesting question that the story raises, is that individually, these photos are uploaded, you know, they're very innocuous, they're uploaded for a particular purpose, maybe to share them with friends and so forth, or just to make them publicly available. Now what's happening here is those photos are being collated in a new way. They're being given new meaning, used for a new purpose. Now, like I said, in this case, that purpose is very valuable and I think broadly acceptable, but the interesting question is, can you then use that sort of technique, or can the same thing sort of happen where the usage is not quite as acceptable to the public?
Ah, that's a very interesting issue. I mean, how important is it that, in a sense, that there's no explicit permission either asked for or given?
It's somewhat important, I would say. I mean, it's worth remembering that my understanding here is that the photos were uploaded to sites like Picasa or Flickr and were generally publicly available or made publicly available. I think the issue of permission becomes a bit more interesting when you're talking about private photos, like photos that you're uploading just for your contacts on Facebook or LinkedIn to see, for example.
Let me bring in Zoe Kleiman, who's here, and it follows on from that, because these are all pictures sent in, as Brent was saying, to Flickr, to Picasa. I mean, once you've sent pictures to those websites, I mean, are those pictures no longer yours, in effect?
I think we are all aware now that the internet is a public domain, and if you're uploading a photo or indeed anything, you know, be it a status update or a tweet or whatever, onto a public website that can be viewed by anybody, you've sort of lost a little bit of control of that picture. Now, obviously, you want to retain your image rights, you have it tagged to your name, but you can't really be too precious about what happens to it from that point.
And I suppose it underlines, doesn't it, the mining of information, just how much is actually going on without us actually engaging in that necessarily and understanding that is actually what is happening all around us.
I think, Matthew, we're entering a new era now. You know, for years we've been used to uploading all of this data, sharing our lives, sharing our photos, and not really thinking about what happens to it. You know, you might tweet 15,000 times. You think, well, who's going to find that tweet ever? But now that the algorithms and the computer programs are getting much more sophisticated, we are able to mine and go back years and years and find data that you might have totally forgotten that you put up in the first place.
Brent, let's pick up on that point, because I know this is an area that you particularly have views on, just the scope of the mining of information that I suppose all of us, as we go about our daily lives, perhaps are unaware of. Even, you know, when you sit there at your typewriter and you're typing, the sort of information that is being gleaned from even a basic thing like that.
Yes, I mean, it can be absolutely shocking, and quite often we don't know about the data that's being collected until stories like this come out and, you know, reveal not only what the data is, but also how it can be useful, the sorts of purposes that it can be used for. So I think it's not necessarily troubling when the uses are socially valuable, but certainly something that we, in doing ethics, one of the things that we struggle with is in trying to predict the sorts of uses that newly collected data can be put to. And for the individual, for you and I to be able to predict that, for example, when we're putting a photo up or when we're using Google search, it seems impossible. I mean, really the only people in the position to have any sort of idea about the potential usefulness of the data that we're creating online would be the people collecting it and the people analyzing it.
Yes, and I suspect extraordinarily difficult to regulate as well. Well, Brent Mittelstadt and Zoe Kleiman, thanks